modern men's dance program in prison in America, choreographed by and taught by an incredible teacher and choreographer named Susan Slotnick.
Yes.
And her and Bethany Wooten, and they go in each week, several times a week, and they support these men in basically kind of like it's Susan's choreography, but it's kind of an Alvin Ailey style modern men's dance. And that is an incredible program, and it is incredible what these men do, the commitment, the physical rigor. It's no joke what they step into, and it's beautiful what they create. So there's a modern men's dance program. There's a music program where the men are learning how to play piano. It's like a keyboard lab. They get to keep the keyboards in their cells to be able to practice. Yeah. And then we also have a theater program. So pretty much maybe every year and a half at Woodburn, we do a major production. So the last production was Macbeth. Okay. Shakespeare's Macbeth, and now we're in a process of kind of figuring out what the next show is going to be, probably for May or June.
Okay, I saw the Macbeth production because I got a copy of the DVD, so it was definitely pretty good, high production.
Yes.
The brothers really are dedicated to that craft, and I was laughing with Edwin about that because he had a small role where they were kind of throwing him around, and I was like,
yes,
that's cool. You're letting these guys throw you around, and
that's right.
You're not letting it get you angry.
And
that's a good thing.
And that is a big thing, right? It's kind of like how do people step into these kinds of experiences and kind of, I just want to say, I think one of the best things about what we do is that we invite people into an environment where they get to practice the best parts of themselves. They get to practice their most generous aspects of themselves, being a team player, being willing to listen to other people, being willing to work on their triggers that may have gotten them in trouble in the past. All of that is kind of some of the great stuff of what we invite for our participants. Yeah.
And how long have you been involved with RTA?
It'll be about 3 years, pretty soon, right? And about 12 years ago, I had an opportunity through my master's program to go to Poland, actually, to Warsaw, to help create an original theater piece with incarcerated men there. Wow. And it was kind of crazy about how that all happened. But anyway, I went to Poland. I was a part of this team, and it was this process where the men wrote and told their stories, and kind of, the woman who facilitated this, this woman named Thea Sepenuk, she basically directed and created this piece called Forbidden Faces. And so in that process, I did my kind of master's thesis interviewing data collection. I interviewed the guys and what's the potential for this kind of theater for personal or social change. So I had ended up having that experience in prison about 12 years ago. And then for about 7 years after that, I basically was working in universities as a social justice diversity educator and trainer, race dialogue, allied bystander development training, stuff like that in Amherst College and then in Suffolk University in Boston. And I kind of felt sort of complete with that work. In universities, I wanted to do something else. I wanted to come to New York, and by a whole series of amazing events, this job came across my email, and I ended up getting it, and it's been a beautiful gift.
And what was the first prison you went to visit in New York State?
Woodburn.
Woodburn.
Wow. And it was incredible because the first 15 minutes I was there, I was meeting with this group of guys who kind of run the program from the inside, and I was talking to this wonderful man named Tony, who I hope is listening. And I was 42 at the time, and he was just telling me about himself. And he said, Craig, I came in when I was 18, and I've been here for 24 years. And I thought to myself, that's my age. Wow. And where have I gone and what have I done since I was 18? Yeah. And he's been in some place like this. And it was really a huge eye-opener. Yeah. And he's an incredible person. So,
tell me about Sing Sing.
Sing Sing is kind of like the flagship RTA. And Sing Sing has a lot of advantages, I think, in terms of programming, because they have a lot that goes there.
Historically, yes.
A lot of amazing education programming, arts programming. Carnegie Hall has a music program with them. So Sing Sing does a major production every year. So for example, this last May, they did a production of The Wizard of Oz, the musical. Wow. And let me tell you, to see about 25 maximum security men's prisoners playing Munchkins is like something you've never quite seen before. It was quite something.
Who played Dorothy?
We bring in actresses. We bring in actresses sometimes, but actually a man played the Wicked Witch of the West brilliantly.
Wow.
And the thing is, what was great about that show was, in the whole 20 years that RTA has been in existence, we've never had permission to have them perform for their family. families, because it's always been a security issue.
Yeah.
The security said we can't let them in, but this was the first time that that they've allowed families to come.
Wow.
So the men and the participants in our programs have a huge part in choosing the material we do. So they chose to do The Wizard of Oz because they wanted to do a family musical because they knew their kids would come.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so their kids came. It was so beautiful. It was so deep. So they did The Wizard of Oz. Next year in May, they're going to be. I just want to say that musical was directed by an extraordinary woman named Kim Breeden, who's a musical theater director, vocal teacher, amazing. And next year they're going to be doing Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. So they're preparing for that now in a Shakespeare class. It's a huge journey every time.
Wow. Rob, you would have been able to play one of the Munchkins?
Of course.
Yeah.
Well,
a big Munchkin.
Well, what we did is they took buckets and turned them upside down and put them on these little rollers. So the guys sat down in the buckets, and they had these kind of multicolored smocks over them. So they'd roll around and do all this choreography with their arms. It was absolutely hilarious. It was fantastic.
We are creative.
No doubt.
That's right.
Was David Wayne a participant in any of those programs? You know David Wayne?
I don't know David.
Yeah. We were incarcerated together, and I was amazed. He's an actor for real. And I was amazed how this guy could quote Shakespeare from beginning to end.
Wow.
Yeah, this guy was amazing, man.
Right.
That takes some skill.
It
Not
does.
anybody could do that, and you have to really put some serious work in. I was
Yeah.
telling Craig prior to us coming in here that I never really took part in any of like arts programs other than some poetry. We did some poetry, but I remember while I was at Otisville, there was remember there was one of the brothers that was there who his brother was on one of those TV shows. I forgot the brother's name, but you knew him too. His brother was on like one of those cop
Law and
shows.
Order?
Was it Law and Order
That
or,
was
or
David.
one of those?
That was David.
That was David,
Yeah.
and he was starting a theater program there. So I sat with him for a few times, and I was like, "Wow, this is a lot of work, man. You have to sit down, you have to study, you have to practice. You know, it takes a lot of rehearsing. Like it's huge dedication. So talk about some of that. Talk about like the dedication that it takes for the men. What
Right.
does that look like for them?
Well, we don't have a kind of talent requirement for who shows up for our programs. It kind of all are welcome who want to be a part of it. It's not a mandatory program, so what's great about it is that the people who come in the door really want to be there.
Yeah.
People who maybe weren't so successful in school, or they're part of the school or prison pipeline and it wasn't working for them, but they felt more comfortable with the arts, so they would be willing to come in and sing or be an actor. It requires intense commitment, and that's a big part of our program. When we walk in the door, everybody goes through kind of a 6 to 8 week orientation program so that they can get to know what they're stepping into, and then we can kind of let them know what's going to be happening here. And then one of the biggest things we talk about is the commitment that's required to be a part of this experience. Because they're going to be asked to step outside the box about how they engage with other people. They're going to be asked to express themselves in ways that may be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And we have to know that they're willing to do that. And some people fall away, like in all life, right? But the ones who stay, the growth and the journey they go on is some of the most extraordinary transformation I have ever seen. And they would say that for themselves.
I think that's a very unique story that doesn't get told about what's taking place inside the prisons. Whenever you watch these so-called prison shows, I mean, lately you've been able to see some changes with, Orange is the New Black and They've been revolutionary. But when you're talking about shows like Oz and some of these other prison shows where all they highlight is the negativity, and they super like, and it's like insane. Like, yeah, some of that is taking place, but it's not
to the extent
that you're highlighting it, right? There's a reason why you're doing that. You're sensationalizing violence because that's what gets seen, and that's what people tune in to see.
Right.
But I mean, I spent 14 years in prison, and we did, and Rob and I, we did a lot of organizing. We sat in classrooms, we studied, we got into ourselves and did a lot of introspection, and there was a lot of rehabilitation taking place within us, and a lot of education, and a lot of like we ate together, we sat together, we developed relationships where they were family. Like Rob is my family. Brother Imani is here, and these are things and we were vulnerable together. This is the stuff that right now we may have people listening and be like, who may have family inside and wondering what's happening, what's taking place. They're fighting every day, and there's all of this stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening in that sense. There's a lot of abuse. Yeah, but then there's also a major portion of the population who is taking part in these programs that are really benefiting us. I mean, I probably have people listening right now from the barbershop from around the way where I grew up at, right? Because I left them some flyers and they're giving us some promos. So big shout out to the brothers over there in Sharp Styles on 167th Street, South Avenue, BX in the house. Yeah, definitely. Go ahead, go over there. But they're probably listening, and they got people there sitting wondering, like, what is all of this about, you know? And you know, so talk a little bit about your feelings when it comes to that, because I'm sure you've watched some of these reality shows and some of this sensationalization of the negativity.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I mean, you know, prison is you know, in the popular culture, for some kind of strange reason, it's kind of like
popular or unpopular.
Popular culture is
Yeah.
kind of like a sexy topic for some reason. It's like, you know, kind of looking in the fishbowl and seeing how people live, and you know, I mean, the whole thing. And at the same time, though, it's the reality of it is invisible. When you talk about, you know, prisons as invisible cities, you know, out of sight, out of mind. People don't want to see it, you know, even though they're like titillated by it by modern culture, and it's just such a contradiction, you know, because it's not real what they're looking at. Right? But you know, I hear people all the time. Why do you provide this programming to them?
Yeah.
You know, why do this? They don't deserve rehabilitative, meaningful programming or education.
But
they're criminals, right? But they do deserve it, right? And so, you know, what I have to say about that is, you know, on the one hand, it's a human issue, right? I mean, we often say, what would it be like if your entire life was defined by the worst mistake you ever made? That there's no chance of redemption or forgiveness, that you're just supposed to suffer permanently, right? So that's one question, ethically, morally, right? But the other thing is 95% of incarcerated men and women go home.
That's right.
And that impacts everyone. And so how do we want these people to go home? Do we want them coming home with PTSD? Do we want them coming home more violent and as better criminals because that's what they're learning inside? Or do we want them practicing critical life skills? Do we want them on a journey of transformation so that when they go home to their families and their communities, they are actually meaningfully able to connect and support and be a citizen in the world that they can be?
Yeah.
And that's why it's important that we do this kind of programming.
So following up on